think it's really important when looking at a marketing strategy to plan moments across a calendar year and to pre-prepare content which can be pushed out across all of the marketing channels that a brand has to harness. I think there's a great example in China with Singles Day where there's more revenue generated for retailers than there is during Cyber Monday in the States. And I think having an understanding of what that local calendar is and being able to plan moments and pick your moments in advance is absolutely key, because you can really leverage those to your advantage. It's more important now than ever before for brands to really make sure content is at the heart of their marketing strategy. We're seeing a lot of the bigger brands setting up social newsrooms, monitoring sentiment and making sure they've got really rapid response times to key events. I think it's the job of an agency to really harness those moments and to make sure that we realise the full potential of how they can be leveraged to a brand's true potential for a brand. So there's a great brand called Frank & Oak, who are a Canadian brand, and they're quite forward-thinking. They actually use customer feedback to inform what their offline product strategy is, and they've really invested in building a culture around what their brand stands for, and they've done it with a very confident tone of voice. 35% of all of their staff makeup is editorial, and if you look at the amount of revenue that's being driven to that brand just from their curated SoundCloud playlists, it's really phenomenal. So understanding what your brand culture is and really having the confidence to put that tone of voice out there is hugely important. But as you move into international markets, you really need to accept the fact that your brand will mean different things to different people. Dr. Martens is a really great case in point. To a UK consumer, they stand for something that's very much 80s. In France, they stand for comfort. In Japan, they're really quite hipster. And how that affects your tone of voice, both in your marketing messages, your advertising, and the content you produce, is something you need to be super aware of and adapt to very quickly. There are some brands that have really harnessed the power of editorial, and I think Frank & Oak, which is a Canadian brand, have done a fantastic job of this. And they're potentially quite an extreme example. They go as far as actually using customer feedback to inform their actual product strategy. But 35% of their team are editorial, and if you look at the amount of revenue that's just driven through their curated SoundCloud playlists, it's really phenomenal. And I think brands really need to listen to their consumers, but they also need to be prepared to adapt to what their marketing messages and their content is in various countries. I think Dr. Martens is a great case in point here. They mean something completely different for a Japanese consumer, where they're perceived as a very trendy brand, to a French consumer, where they're seen as a comfort brand, to a UK consumer, where they're seen as a sign of lost youth. And you've got to be prepared to accept that your brand will mean different things to different people in different places. I think wearables is a really interesting space, and to me it's interesting because it'll only increase this trend we're seeing in search right now, which is search through intent. People are searching for whys, not whats, and as wearables become more omnipresent, it's really up to the search engines to decipher quite colloquial questions that people are going to ask them, especially as this becomes a norm for the new generations. Understanding how you can build content around the questions people are asking: what prom dress should I wear? What should I wear to a meeting in X, Y, or Z? That's a really important space to be playing in terms of content. And I think a lot of brands underestimate the importance and resonance that carries, and I think a lot of brands really hold back and they wait for everything to be perfect, but we live in an always-on world, and having a really reactive marketing strategy is absolutely instrumental in getting your name out there. I think small brands have a really unique opportunity right now to be really agile with the technology they implement and with how they conduct their marketing activities. It all comes down to understanding what your brand messaging is, having confidence in your tone of voice, and being prepared to get the word out. A lot of the larger brands are really struggling, and that's leaving a massive gap to really, gain a new type of consumer who isn't after opulence or luxury brands. They're after niche brands, and they're after being unique themselves. And I think that's vital. It's vital to recognise the value people place in having something other people don't, and that's a massive opportunity to the type of brands that we're talking to today.